Yo, what's up? My name is Petrowski MTG, and I originally had a long preamble about how important it is to pick up all these older cards before they spike in value, and how we've seen that a ton recently with things like Phyrexian Dreadnought almost doubling in price from $200 now to around $375 or so dollars, Meditate going from $7 and now going up to $60, Phyrexian Devourer going from $15 to $60 plus dollars. We're seeing a bunch of these older cards and reserve list cards spike in value, but for the sake of saving you guys some time, this is just going to be a list of reserve list cards for $1 or less, about $1. You can just throw into your cart to get your TCG player cart up to $5 per seller, so that you can go ahead and get free shipping. These are the kind of cards that you just want to kind of add to your cart, add in there as a little bit of extra topper onto your cards you're already purchasing. So let's go ahead and jump into these. Are all reserve list cards that are worth picking up a few copies of just in case for under about $1. And we're going to start with our honorable mention, because this card is a meme. This card is not actually doing anything or going anywhere, but I can see it becoming a funny little fella somewhere along the way. The Dwarven Pony. This is a reserved list card. It is the only printing of it is in Homelands, which was a very printed set. There are more Homelands cards out there than a lot of these other cards, but it's $1 for the Dwarven Pony. It wouldn't surprise me if some memer came along and bought a bunch of these up one day and skyrocketed this dumb little fella to tons of value. Or maybe dwarfs go crazy with Mountain Walk, who knows. Next up, onto the real cards. I think a lot of these cards are actually really interesting. They may not be the most powerful thing right now. Some of them are underrated, honestly, right now, but a lot of these have potential for future things being changed. Jabari's Influence, I believe the most popular or most expensive card we'll be talking about today at about $1.20. Woof, super expensive cardboard, fellas. Jabari's Influence, 3 and 2 white pips for a rare from Mirage. An instant, play only after combat. Kind of confusing wording on this. Gain control of target non-artifact, non-black creature that attacked you this turn and put a -1, -0 counter on it. This is stealing a creature in white. Not only is it that, but in Commander, you could play this, steal your opponent's commander for the rest of the game. This is like game ending for certain Commander decks and certain play styles. This is a very unique, very weird, very quirky card that I don't really see getting much other play outside of just Commander. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's fun, weird. It's like political. You can bluff it in Commander. You could take someone's, obviously, their commander themselves. I think it's really interesting. For $1, dude, go ahead and add this to your deck. Go ahead and add it to your cart. Try it sometime for fun, and then when you hit the combo, kind of take it out of the deck if you want to, right? Next up, Discordant Spirit is the name of this. Let me let you zoom out a quick sec. Discordant Spirit is the name of this card, going for about 75 cents, a little bit under $1 right now. 2, a black and a red for a spirit that at the end of target opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Discordant Spirit for each 1 damage dealt to you this turn, and then at the end of your turn, you remove all of these counters. You actually have some really weird potential for some wacky combos here. I kind of think this could weirdly be played in something like pre-modern, with like fling combos already floating around in that format. Obviously, this is 4 mana, but you do have access to a lot of the soul lands in pre-modern anyway, making it effectively 3 lands to play this. If your opponent is an aggro deck, and a lot of the aggro decks in pre-modern deal damage to themselves, they might not be equipped to take a huge chunk from this creature on the swing back, being able to take a bunch of damage, and then it's at the end of your turn, so you could take a bunch of damage from your opponent, give it a ton of counters, go to your turn, attack with it, and then fling it afterwards. I think this card actually has weird combo potential, both in Commander and older weird formats like pre-modern. I don't think we'll see this popping up in Legacy or any like super competitive formats, but I think it's honestly underrated for $1. Once again, it's just $1, fellas. Next up, over to Thelin's Curse from Fallen Empires. A lot of the cards today are rares as well, which kind of impacts their, obviously their quantity and their price. Thelin's Curse, another weird card. Who would have thought $1 reserve list cards are strange? Shocked nobody. All right, 2 green pips for an enchantment that says blue creatures do not untap as normal during their controller's untap phase. During his or her upkeep, a blue creature's controller may pay an additional blue to untap it. Each creature may be untapped this way only once per turn. I wish it like just held them down or was a little bit more hateful. It's honestly like being able to get out of it by paying some blue is not ideal, but it is interesting. I think this is an interesting sideboard hate piece card for blue decks in, once again, pre-modern or those older strange formats. I don't think you'll see this. You might see this in Commander by some casual players who just want to hate on blue players, but obviously in blue you usually aren't winning via your creatures. So I think it's a fun card. It's weird, it's wacky. Is it that good right now? I'm gonna be honest, I don't really think so, but it could be something niche that pops up in the future, and that's where a lot of these reserve list cards come in handy. Is like, you don't think it's not good right now, and then something gets printed, something changes, a new format pops up like pre-modern, wink wink, and now all of a sudden these old weird cards that like maybe could be good all of a sudden actually become relevant. Next up, one of the most underrated cards on this list in my opinion is Call to Arms. I know it's a bit tricky, but I've actually played this card a fair bit. I feel like it works out quite well, especially in Commander. Call to Arms is 1 and a white for an enchantment that says choose a color. As long as target opponent controls more cards of that color than any other color, all white creatures get +1/+1. And then if at any time that opponent does not control more cards of that color than any other color, bury Call to Arms. Basically what you want is to play a white weenie deck, especially in Commander. A white, which is not, to be fair, you don't see a whole lot of white weenie Commander decks, but if you're playing some sort of like white weenie Commander deck, monocolor, mono white, against someone playing like mono green, or you know, maybe like a Rakdos deck that's like heavy into red or heavy into black, you can go ahead, choose their most dominant color obviously, and you can usually keep Call to Arms around. Usually if you play it smart, which does take some decent strategy, and sometimes you just get screwed no matter what, but you can get a blanket +1/+1 to all your white creatures for 2 mana, which even then is like not amazing, but at least it's not just tokens, it's not like just soldiers, it's to all white creatures, which is really relevant. I think this is not the best board pump by any means, don't get me wrong, I'm not crazy, right? But it's super interesting, solid, and definitely worth considering to your decks. And it is a reserved list rare for, once again, under $1 from Ice Age. A really cool set. I feel like Ice Age is honestly one of those sets that was underrated for a long time, and it's getting more love. We are seeing more Ice Age cards spike over the past few months. Next up, on a sketchier one, Energy Vortex, 3 and 2 blue. When you play Energy Vortex, choose target opponent. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove all energy counters from Energy Vortex. During chosen opponent's upkeep, he or she may pay 1 generic mana for each energy counter on Energy Vortex, or it deals 3 damage to her. And then you can pay X to put X energy counters on Energy Vortex. Use this ability only during your upkeep. That's a lot to break down. Let's go through it step by step. Essentially, this card is a blue control burn win con. You're basically trying to force your opponent to either use all of their mana and like tap them out to deal with Energy Vortex each turn and extend the game, or you're trying to tap down your opponent's land so they can't pay for this stuff and just deal direct damage to them. The problem with this card is you kind of already have to be ahead to use it as a win con, but it wouldn't surprise me once again if something like this gets played as like a one of in like a super stally long-term mono blue or whatever blue control deck in pre-modern, like a super, just it's basically like a lantern control type thing, where this is just like the one win con where you're just trying to stop your opponent from playing the game. You make sure that you get ahead by get more lands on the battlefield than your opponent, and you just answer every threat, and then eventually you have one copy of this to slowly burn down your opponent. Probably one of the weaker cards on this list, but it is a reserved list rare from Mirage, a very cool set for under $1. Next up, probably the weakest card on this list, but I think it's interesting, Ertai's Familiar. 1 and 1 blue for a 2/2 illusion creature. Also, really beautiful art. Can we just appreciate that for a quick sec? It's a phasing creature, and this has actually been errated. So it says, if Ertai's Familiar leaves play, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. But you may know, phasing does not count as leaving play. So this actually does nothing on the card itself. Reading the card explains the card, or it's supposed to, but this has actually been errated to say when Ertai's Familiar phases out or leaves the battlefield, mill 3 cards. That is very important. So this is basically milling yourself for 3 every other turn with phasing. It's really slow, really awkward, but it's also a 2/2 creature, I guess, if you want to use it for that. It's a self-mill thing in pre-modern. It's super slow, or in older formats. You wouldn't want to use this in Commander if possible. People played Nyxweaver. I played Nyxweaver, but obviously Nyxweaver can grab a card back from the graveyard, so This is once again a weaker card on the list, but beautiful art, under $1. And I don't know, man, maybe they revisit. I think the most likely thing is they revisit phasing in the future, bring phasing back in Magic the Gathering, and maybe that's where it finds some value or niche with new printed cards. Next up, Lightning Cloud. The next two cards are actually like mono red control strategies. I think really could pop up, like mono red prison type things that could pop up in potentially pre-modern. Let's see. Lightning Cloud is 3 and 1 red for an enchantment. Lightning Cloud deals, you pay 1 red then. Lightning Cloud deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Use this ability only when a red spell is successfully cast and only for each such spell. Now, something important to note here is that it does say whenever a player casts a red spell, you may pay 1 red to deal 1 damage to any target. This is very important because I actually think this could be a really good sideboard card against mono red in pre-modern. Imagine it's a mono red mirror match and your opponent whips out the Lightning Cloud, and then all of a sudden, every time you or your opponent cast a red spell, you can ping down one of their 2/1 creatures, which are very common in pre-modern, of course. I think this card is actually like secret hidden tech. I think it could be super interesting. I will be buying up a few copies of these just in case in the future for sure. Now, this is a card that I've actually already purchased. I've already purchased a few copies of Jabari's Influence and also purchased a few copies of Heart of Bogarden. I do want to say, when it comes to these videos, I try to be transparent with you guys. Some of these cards I am buying myself just in case the market goes up. Obviously, I'm a very small channel. I'm not here trying to manipulate the market. It's one of those like lose-lose situations as a quote-unquote YouTuber, which obviously I'm not really for Magic the Gathering. But it's a lose-lose. You know, if I buy these cards and then I obviously pump and dump, that would be bad, but I'll be holding on to these cards for quite a while. But if I buy these cards and then I make a video about it, people will accuse me of pumping and dumping. But then if I don't buy the cards and I make a video about it, well, all of a sudden now I'm not putting my money where my mouth is at, and I'm like suggesting people to make a risk or an investment that I'm not even myself making. So it's one of those tough catch 2022s. The internet's always gonna be mad. What are you gonna do? Kind of just shrug your shoulders. I like to be transparent with you guys about that and tell you everything I'm doing financially with Magic the Gathering behind the scenes. Anyways, Heart of Bogarden. 2 and 2 red for an enchantment with cumulative upkeep of 2. If Heart of Bogarden's cumulative upkeep cost is not paid, it deals damage equal to its last paid cumulative upkeep to target player and each creature he or she controls. I think this could be a 4 of and a very weird, interesting mono red control style of strategy. It sucks that it's so slow. It does nothing until like at least 2 upkeeps later. So you would want to play Heart of Bogarden, go to your next turn, pay the upkeep cost, and then on the next turn you cannot pay it if you want to, and do 2 damage to all creatures and the opponent player. If you can do it for 2 turns and make it do 4 damage, like that's really, really good. But this could be like, once again, like an end game thing where you kind of, this ends up being a board wipe. Like in mono red control, this ends up being a board wipe, which kills all of your opponent's creatures. Ideally, if you can do 4 damage, you're killing pretty much everything in pre-modern. You're trying to do as much damage as possible to everything, as well. It's board wipe, but it's also a win con. That's the big thing here, is that this card does both of the things you would want to do in a theoretical mono red control deck, which does not exist right now. So, well, you know, that's, I've got to factor that in, but it's a really beautiful card. It's Therese Nielsen, a really cool artist, really cool card, underrated. Once again, it's $1. It is $1, a reserve list rare for $1. That's the most important thing to shout out. It is really easy to pick a few of these up. I think this card's really interesting. I think it's really cool. It also weirdly doesn't, the H is not capitalized. I don't know if it's a typo, or I feel like it's gotta be. I don't know if that's a typo or a mistake or what happened, but yeah, the H is not capitalized for Heart of Bogarden for some reason. Anyways, moving on. Sylvan Wyvern. This is probably the card that looks the weakest at first glance, but I actually think this card could be a fucking threat. I actually think this card could be so interesting in, whether it's pre-modern, it might make it a little too slow for pre-modern, or just like really old, maybe like certain other old school formats that may pop up. Like I'm curious to see, with the modern era of Magic pumping out so much stuff so fast and all this hype and blah blah blah, I wonder if people will straight up return to like Stronghold Standard. I call me crazy, it wouldn't surprise me if we just see more and more old school formats becoming a thing like pre-modern, because people are just getting sick of the new stuff. If you like the new stuff, more power to you. I'm not a hater of people. Enjoy whatever you enjoy, but as someone who does prefer the older stuff a little bit, I like to look at stuff like this. So Silver Wyvern, 3 and 2 blue for a Drake, 4/3, a 4/3 flying creature. But here's the real thing: if you pay 1 blue mana, you can counter target spell or ability, which targets only Silver Wyvern, and not only counter it, but redirect it to a different creature. This is actually really interesting, really powerful. Being able to like take your opponent's Swords to Plowshare and put it onto their creature for just 1 blue mana is so freaking good. This card reminds me a lot of like Ojutai, the Dragon Lord in Standard. During Dragons of Tarkir Standard, Dragon Lord Ojutai was a very comparable threat in my opinion. Obviously, this thing got you card advantage. That's the main difference here, which is a big difference. We're talking about cards that were printed, what is this, like 20 years apart? So the fact that there's even anything comparable to Dragon Lord Ojutai back in Stronghold is pretty crazy. And I think it's a really cool card that just must be considered once again for under $1. I think it's a pretty unique end game threat that wins the game in what is that, 5 turns. That's honestly one of the biggest things, is the fact that it's 5 turns as opposed to Dragon Lord Ojutai being exactly 5 power, and killing your opponent in 4 swings is very, very, very relevant. But that's Silver Wyvern. Next up, onto one of the weirdest and most interesting cards on this list, Soul Echo. I think this card is really, really interesting. It's X and 2 white. Now let's read through this step by step. It's a long, wordy card. Read the card, explains the card. Sure, it does. When you play Soul Echo, put X Echo counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are no Echo counters on Soul Echo, destroy it. Okay, sure. Otherwise, target opponent may choose that for each 1 damage dealt to you until your next upkeep, you instead remove 1 Echo counter from Soul Echo. And then Soul Echo says, you do not lose the game as the result of having less than 1 life. Basically, as long as this enchantment is on the battlefield with no with any sort of counters on it, you're able to just continue not losing the game. Now, the really important thing here is that even if you play Soul Echo for 3 mana, if X is 1, you don't destroy Soul Echo until the beginning of your next upkeep. So this card, worst case scenario, essentially reads, you pay 3 mana and guaranteed survive for at least 1 more turn. I think this card is incredibly slept on in Magic the Gathering, if I'm understanding it correctly. This is almost Time Walk levels of interaction, of just essentially taking an extra turn. Now, obviously, if your opponent has enchantment removal and just destroys it, you know, it's taken care of. But I think this is, once again, an extremely underrated card for a reserve list rare for $1. Obviously, if you want to pump a bunch of mana into it, it being like 6 mana for you to essentially, it's basically gaining 4 life or having 4 extra life points to work with. I don't think that's the power of this card. I think the power of this card would be playing it as a 4 of in some sort of, once again, pre-modern deck, or even in Commander if you want to play it as a 1 of. It's essentially like, people love Teferi's Protection. This is very different. Teferi's Protection is an instant card, which is why it's so good. But I think this card is really, really, really underrated. The fact that this can survive you like 3 attacks from, let's say if they don't have enchantment removal, once again, this card survives you a full runaround at a commander table. That's 3 turns. I think this card is criminally underrated. But anyways, that is the final card I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe. I am so freaking close to 1,000 subscribers, and it would be a dream of mine to hit that on a new channel. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. Once again, just like and subscribe if you did enjoy. Most importantly though, have a great day and go buy some cool Magic cards that you enjoy that are also decently cheap and affordable. Have a good one, but for now, peace, Reno.